afternoon. It's good to be in Camden again with friends and brothers and sisters in Christ. I was going to make mention, kind of like Pastor said, kind of a tradition. The person that speaks calls the person that has the church bulletin. You got to give a title to what you're going to say, right? So questions that I ask myself. The first question is Christ coming soon? And what is soon? And I think the Thessalonians thought Christ was going to come in the time of Paul, right? So I want to look at some things about is Christ coming soon. The second thing is, we all, as Adventists, know about Daniel 2 and the image made up of different metals, and I think most of us believe that we're, time-wise, we're down in the toes someplace, right? Some people, I've heard the toenails. I think you're the one I've heard that from, right, sister? And so my next question I asked myself, and so Daniel 7 and Daniel 8 and Daniel 11 repeat Daniel 2 and add all kinds of details, right? And so Daniel 12:1, after Daniel 11, says, there shall be a time of trouble such as never was. And so my next question that I ask myself is, am I ready? So that's what I want to deal with at the end. Am I ready? What is it that I need to be like at that time? And I've never had a problem like our pastor had a problem. He lost his job because he wouldn't take the vaccine, right? I've never had that problem because I worked at a family business and didn't have to go through that. I've had life easy. So can I stand? Well, anyway, I'd like to start by going to Matthew chapter 24. And Jesus is leaving Jerusalem, leaving the temple, and his disciples are marveling at the beauty of the temple, and Jesus informs them that there will not be one stone left upon another. And so they went up to the Mount of Olives, and I'm going to read verse 3. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of the coming of the end of the world? And so we know that they equated the destruction of Jerusalem, the temple, as to the same time as the end of the world when Jesus comes. And I underlined one thing in my Bible. It doesn't say signs, it says sign. And so this morning, like there's signs like the end days will be like the days of Noah, but it's like 5 years ago was that way, yesterday is that way, still going to be that way. But the sign is a specific event, as like if sometimes we make out graphs of timelines of events, there's a certain specific sign. So I want to make some contrast between signs which are related to the sign. Let's go on to verse 4. Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. So we've had deception for 6,000 years, right? And so Satan is so clever. He's a master of deception. And when I asked you to pray for me, the person who was hosting that program, I consider him Satan's right-hand man in convincing and confusing people about I don't even use the word Trinity because it has Catholic connotations, but that there are three distinct persons. And we get in trouble because we're humans, and God is God, and he's so much greater. He's revealed what we need to know, but there's so much we don't know about him. And so we get smart and we ask questions that shouldn't be asked, and we try to delve into things. Well, anyway, there's deceptions galore. And I've heard people say today, I don't know if I believe anybody. It's so bad, right? Of course, and within our ranks, sometimes we'll say, I don't know if I believe anybody but you and me, and sometimes I wonder about you. And that's somewhat try to be funny sometimes, but it's kind of like, you wonder, It's like, what do you believe? Well, obviously, this is a sure word, right? But there's deception. any subject you get into, the Satan's got a spin to it. Everything, right? Let's go on. Verse 5. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many, and shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See, be not troubled, for all of these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. So, it's one of the signs, but it is not the sign. Because just this week, they kind of celebrated that D-Day was 80 years ago this week, right? I was going to look up how many million people died. But Jesus didn't come, right? How many? The Russians? Oh, my. Millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of people killed. Millions. Terrible. But the end didn't come. Pestilence, the COVID. Terrible, right? But that's not a sign of the end. But it's one of the signs of the end, right?
I think your mic is too close to your beard every time you bend your head.
Okay. Thank you. I kept, oh yeah, I can hear it. When I kneeled, I pulled it down, so then I pulled it up too far. Oh, wow. So all these are the beginning of sorrows, okay? So, we see all these things, but can you say Christ is going to come tomorrow? No. But we know it's near. Well, how near? And there's going to be some very specific things. Let's go to Matthew 24:37. Matthew 24:37, and it reads, But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. I think we all know that text, right? And the next verse basically says that life went on as usual, even though Noah was warning them, eat, drink, get married, etc. And it says, and knew not until the flood came in verse 39, and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. So, are we like in the days of Noah? I'm going to read Genesis 6:5. Genesis 6:5. And it says, And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. I believe, talking about today, right? I mean, it's just, and I've expressed things in different places. It's like, I could never guess at some of the things that are going on today would ever happen. And I could share some things that I'm like 95% certain are true that I would never speak about up front. You know, just terrible that are going on. Now, I'm going to go to Luke 17 because Matthew doesn't happen to say this, but it's a parallel to Matthew 24. And Luke also talks about the days of Noah in verse 26, but I gave him verse 28. Also, likewise, also as in the days of Lot, they did eat, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they builded. It's interesting that it doesn't actually share with the evil that was going on, right? It's just like the other day, same as yesterday, do what we do, heedless of the warnings of God. And verse 29, rain, fire, and brimstone, right? And so it will be, verse 30, in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. I want to just add one more text to it. If this is talking about today, if it's not talking about today, you're blind. But there's nothing new under the sun. But Isaiah 5:20 says, Woe unto them that call evil good, and good evil, that put darkness for light, and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet, and sweet for bitter. And just the first part of verse 23, which justify the wicked for reward. to me, that's kind of like political correctness. You know, we don't want to offend anybody. We don't want to hurt their feelings. So we'll kind of, well, you know, and we talk kind of some line of reasoning. Well, you know, this, that was their experience, and you know, but sometimes things need to be said for what they are, right? So anyway, and another familiar text, Timothy, 2 Timothy 3. And while I'm going there, you know, if you, I heard Conrad Vine once make mention that if you thought, and he used this example, if you thought you were a penguin, that's fine. You're a penguin. And if you try to help the person who thinks he's a penguin that he's not a penguin, you got the problem, right? So good is bad and bad is good today, you know. It's everywhere. Well, not here, I hope, but you know what I mean by everywhere. It's just so blatant. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1, know also that in the last days perilous times will come, and I'm not going to read all of them, but verse 2, they're, and I'm going to take a little liberty, obsessed with taking selfies, disobedient to parents, without natural affection, verse 3. Verse 4, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God. I really want to mention verse 5, because it says having a form of godliness by denying the power. So even in the churches, and you know, there's controversies of, well, like my neighbor is a Methodist, and you know, we have conversations every now and then, and well, their church is split up because the vote has gone that, you know, gays can be pastors, you know. We're in the last days, I believe, for sure. And I didn't include one text I should have, and that's from Revelation 7, the first 3 verses. I think this is what's holding things up, is because I'm not ready. And the Lord in His mercy talks about sealing, the work of sealing us. So the Lord waits. I don't think the Lord's going to wait forever. I preached a sermon in my home church once about the way we used to count when we were in hide and go seek. And we let those that were hiding, when we got to 90, we counted out loud 90, and we counted as fast as we could, and we got to 100, and then we would say, here I come, ready or not. So you better get hid. Well, we better be hiding in the Lord, you know? We need to be hiding in the Lord. So, with all that said, I want to go to the sign. We've kind of touched upon signs. Back to Matthew 24. And verse 15 and 16. And Jesus says, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, I want to emphasize abomination, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. So this was a very specific point in time. It was the sign to those that were Christians. It's time to get out of Jerusalem, right? So there were signs. I would assume most everybody's heard of Josephus. And because I'm a caveman, I still consult the encyclopedia. I don't do this. And my encyclopedia says that there was wars between the Jews and the Romans in the year 66 through 70, okay? So there were signs, and here were some of the signs. We read there were false prophets, false Christ, telling people what they wanted to hear, that God's going to deliver us from the Romans, right? And so that caused a situation where the Romans got uneasy and there was war. And Josephus himself was a Jew, and he led a resistance for 47 days before they got overcome at a certain town I'd never heard of before. And he had a way with words, apparently, because most of those that got taken over either got killed or they got sold into slavery. But he had the ability, among other things, he prophesied, if I might use the word, that the present general was going to become the Caesar at some point, and he was right. And he actually got a stipend of money from them, and he got a place to live in Judea that was provided by the Romans. So when the armies came, pretty easy to tell, right? You look out one day, and there's the armies around. But so that's the sign. But there were signs. So those that had their spiritual eyesight on, in AD 66, they saw that there was war between the Jews and with the Romans. So they sensed, maybe it's going to happen. And I believe we're at the time where something's going to happen, right? And so when the armies showed up, they knew it was from God, right? And so we have situations like that. There's going to be certain events. Okay. And this is interestingly, Mrs. White makes comment that Cestus, the general, he had besieged Jerusalem, and all of a sudden he decided to take off and leave. God's intervention. Historians have no reason to understand why, but we know why, right? And not only that, Mrs. White makes comment that the Jews were so absorbed in taking advantage of the Romans fleeing that they attacked their rear guard and did a lot of damage, and that made it easier for the Christians to get out of Jerusalem because the Jews would have made it harder for them. God has his ways of working, right? So, when the disciples asked Jesus, when shall these things be? Is it possible that before the destruction of Jerusalem and before the second coming, certain verses could apply to both? I would dare say that this particular, and I'm going to read it again, Matthew 24, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. That's actually, the abomination is mentioned in Daniel 9:27. So I want to read from the Spirit of Prophecy, and I have the book, but in case the electronics fell down, but I'm going to read it. It is now, there's too much glare there. It is no time now for God's people to be fixing their affections or laying up treasure in the world. The time is not far distant when, like the early disciples, we shall be forced to seek a refuge in the desolate and solitary places. As the siege of Jerusalem by the Roman armies was the signal, or I'm going to say the sign, for flight to the Judean Christians, so the assumption of power on the part of our nation in the decree enforcing the papal Sabbath will be a warning to us. It will then be time to leave the large cities, just like they had to leave Jerusalem, right? Preparatory to leaving the smaller ones for retired homes and secluded places among the mountains. So, what is the sign? When our nation has a decree enforcing the papal Sabbath, okay? So, are there signs pointing us that that's going to happen, but it hasn't happened yet? Anybody like to just, sometimes in Ellsberg, I actually do a lot of, kind of like Sabbath school. Would anybody like to just share what you believe is some of the signs saying that that is near? I believe it could be really soon. Anybody like to just share?
Well, they're talking more and more about forced Sabbath for the environment to heal and
this is kind of my understanding, is the devil's no dummy. And he's got the world so messed up. What subject could we talk about that's not messed up, right? I mean, just everything. It can't last forever like just creating money out of thin air. It can't just last forever that people think that they're penguins. Any subject we talk about, it just can't keep going on. And so the devil swings the country one way, then he has a reaction the other way, and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Eventually, I would dare say to by far the vast majority of people, a Sunday law would really cure the issues. It'll be one of the most logical things. We have forgotten God. Is that true or false? Yes, it's true. We need to do something about it. Is that true or false? Yes, that's true. And you could ask it in all kinds of different questions. Yeah, that's true. I have a neighbor who had been talking about some of these things. And he came to evangelism series, and when the Sabbath question came up, it's like they didn't come anymore. But we have a good relationship with him. And so I'm troubled that I haven't helped him. But anyway, I'm sitting in his place one time talking, and he has a picture up on his wall. And in the forefront, in the center of the picture, is Jesus with his lamb in his arms, and the sheep are following him. And I told him the day is coming when they're going to try to force you, because of the mess the world's in, they're going to try to force you to be good, to go to church, to cure the problems of the world. But remember your picture. God's sheep know the Lord's voice and they follow. God does not force. So pray for my neighbor that he sees that and remembers that. Did I have another Spirit of Prophecy quote? Yeah. Great controversy. Let the principle once be established in the United States that the church may employ or control the power of the state, that religious observances may be enforced by secular laws, in short, that the authority of the church and state is to dominate the conscience, and the triumph of Rome in this country is assured. God has given us warning of the impending danger. Let it be unheeded, and the Protestant world will learn what the purpose of Rome really are. I'm sorry, there's glare. Only when it's too late to escape the snare. And it goes on. She is silently growing to power, and is there more to the quote? Yeah. Her doctrines are exerting their influence in the halls, in the churches, the hearts of men. She's piling up in her lofty and massive structures, in the secret recesses where the former persecutions will be repeated. And the next sentence is the point I want to emphasize. Stealthily and unsuspectedly, she is strengthening her forces to further her own ends when the time shall come for her to strike. So, I believe, obviously, we haven't reached that point. And I believe that's the point. If you're doing a timeline, there is a certain line where this happens. It's not taken 20 years to happen. All of a sudden, she strikes. So I believe we're before that strike. So she's steadily and unsuspectedly strengthening her forces right now. That's where we're at. So, the head man, he even claims to be Christ, right? Of Babylon. And I want to read from Revelation 17, verse 3. And I want to go back to a earlier quote that Jesus said, referring to Daniel, the abomination that makes desolate was the Roman armies. And you will see that word again. And I believe Revelation 17 is showing that the deadly wound is being healed. Because among other things, it's like all the world wonders after the beast. And eventually the 10 kings have no dominion I'm not using word for word, but they received power for a short time with the mother of harlots. So her forehead had this name written: Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. I would suggest to you this morning that, and Randy touched upon it some in our lesson, behind the scenes she's stealthily working, as we've already seen, but the players that are actually the ones in the news and what you hear about, they are the harlots, the Protestant fallen churches, the abominations of the earth. Could I suggest that maybe I wrote them down? Let's see if I can. The United Nations does a lot of abominations. The World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, they may have started out good. Maybe they didn't start out good. But the master of deception, the harlot, the woman, mother of harlots, she knows how to woo and to wow and to deceive. And as I think Randy said this morning, if she's here, she hasn't moved, and everybody's moved toward her, right? It's happening before our eyes. So we haven't reached that point in time yet of that I spoke of in Matthew 24, 15 and 16, where that text did not just apply to the destruction of Jerusalem, but it applies to our day. Does that make sense? I could see, and I want to emphasize the previous quote, where it says, she will strike. So right now, everybody's running to Rome, right? Billionaires, non-Christian leaders, Christian leaders, atheists, rock stars, Hollywood people, they're all running there. And it's interesting. I've watched too much World War II, and it's interesting. Hitler used the brown shirts, and they were evil. And they kind of led revolutions in the streets and scared the people. When Hitler got in power, he didn't need them. And they had their leader, Rome, can't think of his first name, they had him assassinated. That's what's happening now. Rome is using everybody. But behind the scenes, she's pulling the strings. So, one day she's going to strike. And I think of Peter and the apostles, like Peter said, oh, Lord, I won't deny you. He had a lot of years to make up for it. But I don't think we got much time to make up for it when the final movements happen. So I think we should be ready now. And so there's one more text along this line, and it's Revelation 13. And you know the time is coming where Sunday law will be mild at first. Thou shalt not work on Sunday. And so we can live by that. But before it's all said and done, and you can see it in there, if you don't receive the mark of the beast, you won't be able to buy or sell. So I asked myself the question, since I told you that I've had life easy, if I'm kind of hungry and I can't go buy and sell, will I have the patience to wait for the ravens, or will I cave in? You know? Just making it simple, but it could be all kinds of different situations, right? So, I want to go to the good news. And the questions I've been asking myself, am I ready? And so I just want to share a few things that I believe are part of being ready. And the next text I'm going to go to is Ephesians 6:17. And I work at Castor Well Drilling. We have a customer who is a retired state trooper. He couldn't stand being a trooper anymore. And the reason why he couldn't stand being a trooper anymore, he said, some people that really are big trouble makers, they're out of jail before we even get the paperwork done. He felt like he wasn't accomplishing anything. And you know, we have nice names for jails or prisons. We call them correctional facilities. But by and large, not that some can't help some people, some degree, Christ is the correctional facility that everybody needs, right? And he's just like frustrated. So he gave me some advice. And he said to me that you need to get a gun. So this morning, and I remember I said that I went to church on Sunday, and I happened to look at Faith, and she's like, and I talked about the NFL. I don't know if you remember that time. And I just happened to look at her, and she's like, I forget the facial look. You know, it's like, what? So I'm going to change one word in here and take the helmet of salvation and the gun of the Spirit, right? Because they didn't have guns back then. So I'm here this morning to tell you that you need the gun, right? You know what the gun is, right? This is the gun. This is powerful. This isn't a BB gun. This is the real deal, right? Very powerful. So this morning, these are some of the questions I asked myself, am I ready? So I want to go to Romans 3. Romans 3. Verses 20 through 22. And it reads, therefore, and therefore usually is a conclusionary statement of what went before, and it's summarizing what is now going to be said. Therefore, by the deeds of the law, there shall no flesh be justified in his sight, for by the law is the knowledge of sin. And I'm going to stop right there. Especially marked as far as watching modern stuff, modern technology, is watching the life of Luther and his terrible struggle with the fact that he knew he wasn't good, and he tried to be good. And when he found out that the righteousness of Christ is imputed to you when you believe by faith with no works of the law, that is the foundation of it all. And he was like a changed person. Just a changed person. And I should read the next two verses. So, why I'm reading that is that's what I need to experience. And that's what drove the Reformation. I mean, it turned a good portion of Europe right side up. You know, gave them power and gave them an experience where they would die for their faith. You know, they would stand true no matter what. That's what I need. Verse 21, but now the righteousness of God without the law is manifested, being witnessed by the law and the prophets, even the righteousness of God which is by faith of Jesus Christ unto all and upon all them that believe, for there is no difference. So I recognize that is what the foundation of true Christianity is, that for sins past, Jesus had paid the price. Amen? And it's so basic. Well, you know, I think sometimes our attitude is like, oh yeah, I know all that stuff. We need to know it, and we need to know it by experience. We need to know it by experience. And interestingly, I think sometimes it's like, I kind of like to read, and I kind of know a few things, and it's like, do I know about this? Or do I know about this experientially? Do I know it intellectually, or do I know it experientially? And this verse is a great verse. The next one is Romans 5:1, which reads, therefore, another summary statement, because it says, therefore, what has been said before, I'm going to summarize now and tell you, therefore, being justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. It's probably not anything better that you can experience than to be reconciled to God, right? So it's a doctrine, it's a theory, it's a theology, but it needs to be an experience. Right here, right? Right here. Next text. I want to go to Desire of Ages 309, second paragraph. I've read this, and this has really struck me. It's like, is this me? Because it says the greatest deception of the human mind in Christ's day was that a mere assent to the truth constitutes righteousness. Wow. So I think I know quite a bit about various truths in my mind, but do those truths know me? That's the question. So I look at, especially I've read the Gospels, but then I read Desire of Ages, and I'm like, wow, how satisfied people were with the forms of religion. And so I have to ask myself, I was born an Adventist. I think I've been usually perceived as a good guy. In fact, I was shocked I even won the Citizenship Award my senior year at Union Springs. I think I actually won it because I was quiet and didn't challenge anything, didn't know much, to tell you the honest truth. And I was quite docile and very bashful, So, I go to church and, I give money and, I do all the right things. But I could have the form of godliness and have nothing. So that really speaks to me. It's like, that's the way the Jews were. I don't want to be the way they were as a majority. So the next is 1 John 4:19. Very beautiful text, very short. We love him, and this was used in Sabbath school. We love him because he first loved us. So I asked myself, am I in love? And do I have the love of Jesus in my heart? We in the well-drilled business deal with a lot of interesting characters. Most people we would say are pretty nice people, and then sometimes you get some of them like, sometimes I think, and maybe auto mechanics know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. I need the love of Jesus, right? I need the love of Jesus. And I hear people talk about love your enemies, like, but that's so very much to the first thing, to be justified, to be reconciled to God. You love him because of what he did at Calvary for you, right? On Calvary's cross. You could really have two great sermons by somebody that's really good, 3 good sermons, 4 good sermons on what Jesus actually went through on the cross and that separation from his Father because of my sin, that he took, And Jesus couldn't see beyond the portals of the tomb. Jesus, only by faith he did. Wow. What love. And contrasting statement in 1 John 2:15 is, this is where my challenge has been, and I've spoken openly here, that my God was sports. Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. So I challenge you to let the Holy Spirit speak to you. That's where the battle is, right? Anybody? That's where the battle is? Love of the world? Oh, that I have the love of Jesus in my heart. So, experience justification by faith, that Jesus has paid the penalty for past sins. Praise the Lord for that. And I love him because he first loved me. I want to go to Mark 8:34. Which reads, I'm going to just read the last part. Whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. That's where the battle is. Doesn't Steps of Christ say the greatest battle is with self? That's the greatest battle. And I want to deny self, take up the cross, and follow him. I do not think, I know for certainty, if tomorrow the papacy strikes and in short order I have no food and I can't buy and sell, and if I have selfishness in my heart, I'm going to capitulate. That's the bottom line conclusion, I believe. I need to be cured of self. Does that make sense? Because I'm going to take care of self. If I'm hungry, I'm a spoiled brat. I've never, I have said, boy, I'm starved. You know what starved means? I have a good appetite. I've never come close to being starved. You know? I have a Chinese friend that said that many Westerners, I maybe told you this before, have kind of sent their expressions of concern for our Chinese brethren and what they go through. And you know what the China man's response was? We know what it is to stand for religion. You guys don't. Our concern is about you, because you had it easy. And so that hit me like, I want the real deal. And that's why I share this to encourage you too, that we understand and experience justification. We're in love with our Maker. And by the way, being in love with our Maker is to love His Word, right? Because the Word reveals who He is and how He operates and how He does things and what He's going to do. So I want to go to these Arab ages first, if I might. Yeah. And then with the last text. This is the chapter on the rich young ruler that came to Jesus and asked him, what should I do to be saved? And I consider myself a rich young ruler. I'm not so young anymore, and I'm rich because I'm not in debt. And I'm rich because I'm from America. And I'm rich because they do have extra money. And I've had some setbacks, but I'm rich in health. And I have good family. They got their things, but I got a good family I work with. And I know some people that I like in the Camden church, and some in the Ellisburg church, and some of them in the Fulton church. And I have lived life pretty nice. But I have a problem with self. It's always trying to rear its ugly head, right? So it says self-surrender is the substance of the teachings of Christ. And that's the context is the rich young ruler. He had everything going for him, but he couldn't give up his riches. And wow, I wonder about me, Again, I'm kind of a spoiled person, really. I've had life so easy. I've been overseas and see a lot of people with difficult lives, difficult even getting their next meal, difficult with health. That shouldn't be if they knew about being clean and eating right and what have you. So the Holy Spirit goes, hey, Brian, what are you going to do with that right there? I'm going to repeat myself. If I have any self, I'm not going to make it when the test comes. I realize that. And so that's why I speak this morning that way. So I would like to end with the way we started, with our pastor read from Romans 6. Romans 6, verses 3 through 6. Know ye not that so many of us, as were baptized into Jesus Christ, were baptized into his death? And I wrote in my Bible, self-surrender. Therefore, we are buried with him by the baptism into death, that like as Christ was raised up from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we also should walk in newness of life. For if we have been planted together in the likeness of his death, we shall be also in the likeness of his resurrection. Knowing this, that our old man is crucified with him, that the body of sin might be destroyed, that henceforth we should not serve sin. Beyond ourselves, I believe that we have statements in the Bible and the Spirit of Prophecy about a really high calling and a high standard. And I believe beyond ourself and our own salvation, the world needs to see the true deal of true Christians versus all the mess the world's in, so they can make a decision, right? That's what really is the bottom line of why we exist, that the world might see Jesus, because they see him in you and I, right? That's what the world needs to see. I think the Lord's holding the wind still, but sooner or later we're coming to the real showdown. And I want to be among those that stand for the truth because I have Jesus in my life. So, I picked the song 570, Not I, But Christ. So, Not I, But Christ, 570, I believe. Do I have it right? Sometimes I forget things.